Hello. So the Student Community Providers were an organization here on campus dedicated to listening to the needs of our community and what's the best way we can help, learning directly from our community members and the best way we can get involved, and then going on and out there and leading initiatives in whichever way serves the community best. So we've started this last summer and we are growing and we're working to partner with different organizations and help get people more involved in different advocacy and direct service events. Let me hand it off to Climate Change is Medicine so you guys can introduce.
Sure. Thanks, Karam. My name is Shah Jaffrey. I'm co-president with Sam, the Climate Change in Medicine Student Interest Group. And our goal is very similar to Karam's, but we just have a more focused theme. We're interested in getting students involved in advocacy for climate change and hopefully making our campus a climate conscious campus. And connecting with volunteer opportunities and things like that. I'll hand it off to Sam.
Yes, and so we have been just like looking for ways to, I guess, bring climate advocacy to our campus. As we sent out feelers, we got in touch with Dr. Elizabeth Friedman, who is, and it's a long title, and I always have to write it down so I don't forget it, the director of EPA Region 7's Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit, which is very, very cool. And her goal is to advocate for not just clean policies, or community health through advocacy, but also to work with local organizations and advocate at the state level to try to improve the health of people in the community. And she got us in touch with CleanAirNow KC, which is about as local as it gets, like in Kansas City, an organization that is helping to, make this a safer community. We have heard a bit about some of the work that they've been doing. They do a little bit of research, and they, if I'm not mistaken, are currently working on a program to track how truck emissions are affecting local air quality, which I think we will hear a little bit more about. So I know that we are going to, in a little bit, hand it off to them to tell us a little bit more about them and the work that they do. Before I do that, though, are there any more announcements that need to be made, or can we go for it? Okay, great. Oh, sorry, what were you gonna say, Vic?
Yeah, so we're going to start with our we have a quick updates for the Student Community Providers Group real quick. So thank you so much for everyone who can make it today. We have a big project coming up that we are interested to get started, but we're very excited. We're excited to get students involved with it. And it's pretty much a community fridge, and we're trying to put it in a accessible area in Kansas City. Right now, we're working with a bunch of organizations locally that are already in the area of food distribution and providing food to people who need it in the community. And we've been working so far with Dr. Solana from the Community Health Council, and they're trying to give us a little bit more information on how we would roll out this community fridge/freezer project. The Student Community Providers Group were fortunate to get a scholarship from the Medical Education and Mission Award, and that money is about $500, and that's going to go towards this initiative. We have already received a freezer from the KUMC Thrive Pantry. They're very generous in donating that to us, and we're looking for a fridge next. And that's kind of where we are in the planning process of that. We have to propose this project to community organizations that can help us with the rollout of this project, pretty much just hosting the fridge and freezer. And how students can get involved, ideally the spring and summer, is we would need help with maintenance, stocking the fridge, and cleaning the fridge. And we would have to do that every week or every couple of weeks. And we would try to do that in a rotation fashion. If anyone is interested in that project or would like more information, we're still in the planning part of this project. We're fortunate to receive the funding. There's so many more details that we have to plan through, such as meal plans that we can make that reflect the items that are in the fridge and freezer. Awesome. And if anyone's familiar with how to get like the business side of the maintenance of like mechanical things like fridges or freezers, that kind of stuff. We also have to prepare like spreadsheets for the organizations that we're going to contact because we have to propose to them how much all this stuff would cost. So it's a multifaceted project with a great vision for how we can really aid in food distribution to those in the community. And if anyone has any questions, please let us know. There's a link that's in an agenda I can send right now. And we can send you all more information as we get more information as well. I think I'm going to turn it over to Madeline to give us a little bit more updates on vaccination initiatives with COVID.
Hi everyone, I'm Madeline with Student Community Providers as well. As a lot of students might already know, we have some ongoing opportunities to volunteer with COVID vaccination clinics. The main one being through Wyandotte County Health. There has been a recent policy change that M1s and M2s cannot vaccinate on their own without direct supervision, but there's still M3s are still able to do that, and there are also still like non-clinical roles to fulfill. I'm also going to drop our sign-up link for various ongoing opportunities here because we have coming up some individual COVID vaccine clinics the April 16th and 17th and April 23rd and 24th, like Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. It's just an hour per shift. There are sign-up links in this sheet to help get people in the community vaccinated. So again, reach out with any questions about that. Sign-up links are in there, and I'll be sending another reminder email about that as well. Hannah, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we also have our next food distribution event coming up. That's our monthly event where we help out with the AIEBC to help distribute food within the local community through harvesters donations. And last month we had an incredible time. It was really nice and beautiful, and it was really cool to get out in the community and actually be able to see people and see their lives and listen to them and talk to them when we had a chance and be able to give them food. And this month we really need help. We're going to be a little bit more short-staffed than usual. So we would really appreciate if on this Saturday, so April 17th, from 11 to 2 p.m. or like whenever we run out of food, which that can kind of depend on how many people come. If you guys wouldn't mind coming and helping, we could really use the extra help this month.
Hi guys, I'm Sophia. I'm also one of the founding members of this organization. And I just want to have make a comment about this monthly food drop that we do. We're always so thankful for everyone that can participate and that does participate. But I just want to know if you are signing up for this event, just be sure that you do show up, or at least let us know when you aren't going to. We've had the past few months with this, we've had some people that sign up and then don't end up actually coming. We just need to know numbers wise, because the community organizations that we work with, we coordinate with and we talk to a couple of days before the event, let them know the head count. So it can throw us off a little bit when, we say 10 people are coming, but only 6 show up. So if you ever do sign up and you can't come, just let us know. But once again, we're always so thankful for participation, and we hope to see you this weekend.
Awesome. Dr. Friedman and Beto, you guys can take it away.
And no rush, take your time.
Yes, I was just sending one of you your own email addresses accidentally. So give me a moment here and I'll pull up my slides, and then I'll pull up Mr. Martinez's slides right after that. Oh, Zoom share. Beginning. You guys just see the regular slide, right? Or do you see presenter view?
I just see the regular slide, so
Great, wonderful.
hopefully this too.
Okay, so I'm going to try and cover a lot because, well, after talking to Sam and Shah, it seemed like this is what was wanted. So please feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions. The group leaders have my emails. Okay, so let's go. I'm going to talk about the professional pathway, about getting into environmental health, and specifically try and stay focused on climate change, although I work in a bigger scope. And then I'm going to talk about opportunities that you can pursue now. Some a local focus and some a little bigger that will require more work on your part, but I'd be happy to follow up with anyone individually if something, you know, catches your interest. So a bit about me and where I come from. I studied public health in Washington, D.C., originally from the Midwest. Studied public health in D.C. Prior to that, I was a teacher in public adult education. And prior to that, I studied ecology at university. So environment is, you know, part of my baseline. After med school, I finished my residency in internal medicine and pediatrics, or med-peds, in Michigan. And then during my residency, I got involved in an inland oil spill cleanup. And that kind of reignited my passion for the environmental movement. I thought, you know, this is a lot more interesting than hypertension, and I think it could sustain me. That was kind of my framework. And so I reached out to a couple of names that I was familiar with in environmental health and took their advice. I went into another residency in preventive medicine, which does include a public health degree if you don't have one yet. And then I did fellowships in reproductive and pediatric environmental health, which was connected through the PACES, which I'll talk about, and then an occupational environmental medicine fellowship because I wanted that clinical approach to environmental medicine, which was not provided previously. So now I'm back in the Midwest as the medical director of the environmental health team at Children's Mercy and the director of the Mid-America PACU, which I will tell you about momentarily. As far as the environmental health professional training pathway, there are lots of different ways to go. And I guess I want to emphasize this, that you can always change your mind. And I know it doesn't feel like it, but I think that's a really important thing to know along the way. So I started off with general training in clinical practice. And I think that in and of itself is probably enough, depending on what you want to do. There are a lot of people who work in primary care and do work around climate change through their professional organizations. I would say the majority of us. So that's an option. If you're interested in academics and knowing that that is not full-time clinical care, then, you know, there are other pathways to go. Most of them involve, well, almost all of them involve doing some research. And if you want to get to that point, then you probably start now with an abstract or two and move your way up. For climate change, a lot of that research is about public health, using secondary data to, you know, find patterns in your community or internationally, as some do. But there are also opportunities to do bench work or clinical work around specific health effects of climate change, for example. You can do almost every field of practice has found a niche in the climate change conversation. So I wanted to emphasize that for those of you who are feeling torn. And if you want that specific training, you can do what I did and take the preventive medicine route, or occupational environmental medicine, which actually falls under the preventive medicine umbrella. And occupational environmental medicine really does have a strong focus in occupational health. I did the training, not taking that route necessarily, but I did want to point that out. And then, you know, there's the general public health route. A lot of people will get an MPH. I don't necessarily encourage you to do it during your medical training, because I have found that those programs are less rigorous and students come out less informed. But it's an option, and you can still do great work with that. And then there's some other opportunities that are out there that are a little less known. EIS fellowship, the Epidemic Intelligence Service, that is not climate change focused, but folks who complete this fellowship have a lot of doors open to them in the public health world. So I decided to include it in this talk. Like I said earlier, though, you don't have to have special training or go into the academic pathway to work in climate change. There are a lot of professional organizations that have fellowships. NMA, which is sort of the doctor version of SNMA, sort of is the doctor version of the parent organization of SNMA. And they actually have a new fellowship that sounds pretty awesome, that is in partnership with the Medical Society Consortium for Climate Change and Health. The AAP has a policy and advocacy, opportunities for their members. APHA has a ton of fellowships and year-long opportunities as well. And then there are those more social professional organizations, and I don't know if the faculty who are listening know the proper term for these groups, but Physicians for Social Responsibility, Union of Concerned Scientists, Healthcare Without Harm. There's the medical student group, Medical Students for Sustainable Future, MS, the number 4 SF, and then Physicians for Policy Action there. And this list goes on. This is an incomplete list, but a lot of these groups provide opportunity, a platform, and peers to have conversations and share ideas with and work on projects with. And I think there's a lot of value in these groups, bring a lot to the table, even if they are not paid opportunities. So this is just an outline of what's coming next. I'm going to talk a bit about the PACU, a bit about what I'm doing in Kansas City, and then I also wanted to, since we were talking about that career pathway, mention the importance of networking and developing partnerships. I'm relatively new to the region, but I've, through the professional organizations, managed to develop some partnerships, and I'm now on an advisory board for the University of Iowa, and I'm serving as a co-PI for I think a group at KU and UMKC. So there's not one right way to do this, I guess is my point. So the PACU, Pediatric Environmental Health Specialty Unit, or the Mid-America MAPACU. So this is a federally funded program, and you can see the 7 regions of the United States that are, you can, well, the Zoom is in my way. Give me a minute here. Okay, you can see the federal regions that are divided here on the map. So the Mid-America PACU serves Region 7, which is Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. And basically we are federally funded, meaning paid for with tax funding, to provide free consultative services to anyone who calls our 1-800 number or sends us an email. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So those questions tend not to be about climate change. They tend to be around chemical exposures. I would say the most exciting consultation I had, I think I told you guys about this already, but the most exciting consultation I had was probably around a resident and their neighbors, and they found out that their neighbor's yard used to serve as a burial ground for medical lab animals and cadavers. And so they were concerned that their well water was contaminated. And so we did the investigation around that, possible exposure, and then provided a report back to them. So I want to encourage you to use this line, and if you have any questions, please let us know. So this is one of my current projects that I'm working on. And actually, oh, there it is. So it's called Air Pollution in Kansas City. And basically, we are taking, so rewind. This is in part in work that serves Clean Air Now, and Mr. Martinez is going to be talking about that momentarily. So I chose to pursue this work specifically because the community, or a community in the city, has expressed concern about being a frontline community to the rail yard and the industrial yard down by the river, and the effects the air pollution was having on their health. They conducted a citizen science project, and their small air monitoring study, or through their small air monitoring study, they found some concerns. So they then pushed for the EPA to conduct a more robust study, and the EPA did an air quality study that sort of seemed to result in more concern rather than satisfaction. So I was able to receive some internal funding to add the component of public health into this research. So we're using the air quality data from the EPA and health data from Children's Mercy, and hopefully that will expand to more providers in the region. And whatever our findings are, this will be presented to the community, regardless of the outcomes. So what I do as their environmental justice academic partner is provide information, and I provide resources. And once the air pollution and health in Kansas City study is complete, we hope that our findings will be able to be applied in other settings and other contexts. And Mr. Martinez is going to talk a bit about what their group is doing and has done, and I really want to make it clear that the outcomes thus far are not attributable to my work, but the work of our partners at Clean Air Now KC, and the community members who are working with them. They have a great understanding of how to build momentum, how to inspire and move people to take ownership of their community. So this slide kind of goes with that commentary. I wanted to share this framework because if you're interested in doing research with community groups, it's just so important to remember that we're equal partners in this. And this equal partnership is kind of a new approach in academics, but really important if we want to have an ongoing relationship that has real trust, and also if we want to have an impact that is long lasting, because sustainable change comes from within the community, not from the ivory towers. So I won't read you this slide, but my point here was just simply to remind you that we come from privilege as physicians, but anyone we're working with in the community is an equal partner in the work we do. Okay, and then opportunities for now. So I thought this was a few slides longer, but basically, there are a lot of opportunities, and it really depends what you're interested in. It sounds like a number of you are really interested in being on the ground and working within the community, and that's great. Mr. Martinez will talk about some volunteer opportunities with Clean Air Now. I saw that you guys are already working with Groundworks NRG, which is great, and CHC, also great organizations locally. Some other thoughts about things that you can do that I've heard groups talking about through the PACU is providing STEM education to children in the community through schools or summer programs. For those of you who are more interested, maybe more introverted, there are still plenty of opportunities, right? Policy and action, whether state or local. And Mr. Martinez will talk about some of the local opportunities, but we can really have a great impact using the power of the stethoscope. Just in writing a letter to the editor of a local paper, which I do probably once or twice a year. And there are also opportunities to provide public comment when governments are going to make a big decision. So for example, when the EPA was deciding whether or not to, the EPA every 5 years is required to reassess their regulatory cutoff level for certain pollutants. And as the head of the PACU, I put a document together and I sent it to regulations.gov, and then it goes on record. And we provide, just very objective information, but that clearly advocates, without saying advocating, for stronger public health regulations. And I've done that in other areas around, for example, the State Occupational Health Board, when they were reassessing their rules around lead exposure in the workplace. And we were able to get them to include families of their employees as stakeholders, and that changed their policy. So public comment is huge, and I think it's underutilized. And then I wanted to mention a new opportunity that I just found out about recently through the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health. So this is another organization, and I'm on their steering committee for the Academic Pediatric Association as their representative, but they have a conference coming up in May, and 2 days of their conference will serve as training around climate change and health outcomes, and then how to talk to your local or regional policy people, politicians. And so if you're really interested in policy, I think this is a great opportunity, and they do have some scholarships for students. And then along those lines, one thing that I did not put here, but talked to Sam and Shah about, was the possibility of having climate change integrated into medical education. I'm well aware that when we talk about climate change in health education, it's very much public health oriented. When we talk about it relating to medicine, I think we can certainly justify that conversation when we talk about heat exhaustion, increased risk of respiratory diseases, increased migration, resulting in mental health issues. So there are spaces in it for those of you who are sitting on the fence about that. But there is a national consortium of schools, nursing schools, medical schools, public health schools that are working towards integrating climate change into their respective education programs. And I shared that with Sam and Shah as well. And if that is something that interests you, I think the consortium that they know about is also a great opportunity. So that's the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. I will open up the next set of slides then.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that, just following up on that, yeah, Sean and I have been talking with Dr. Friedman about this consortium. We are also maybe, Dr. Friedman has been helping us try to maybe see if we can get KU School of Medicine to join this Climate and Health Consortium. And apparently KU School of Public Health is in Lawrence, but we are not. So if you're interested in joining that yeah, let us know. But yeah, that is something that we are going to work for in the future. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Friedman.
My pleasure. I don't see your slides in my inbox. You're muted.
If I have sharing rights, I can share my screen. Do I have them? Yeah. Okay. Sorry for that messy screen. Can you see my screen? Okay. Wait. Hold on. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. All right. So.
We can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Beto Lugo Martinez. I am the executive director of CleanAirNow, an environmental justice organization here in Kansas City. Our organization, it's a grassroots environmental justice organization. It was initiated around community concerns around fossil fuel and industrial air pollution, climate change, and environmental health inequities at the fence line. That's how our organization started. Community residents coming together saying, you know what, there's something wrong in our neighborhood. We're breathing the stuff. We have asthma, we have heart disease, we have all these other issues that no one in the community seems to understand why or address, not even the health sector, right? So that's how organization formed. We started a lot of our work really monitoring air pollution at the fence line. So residents that live near the rail yard, near the industrial sources, chemical plants, the rail and trucks, a lot of truck in their community. So this screen is mostly just for background. You know, there's a lot of different pollution sources out in the community, especially fence line communities. And when I mean fence line communities, I'm talking about communities that are underserved, that live near industry, that don't have the resources economically, or they don't have the equitable health. They're disproportionately impacted by pollution, right? So this is just an image of different sources that are out there in this particular community, more than others in Kansas City. So like Elizabeth mentioned, in a lot of our work in the beginning was around monitoring, and we found high elevated levels of black carbon. So black carbon is incomplete combustion of fossil fuels, and it comes from diesel, right? And it's heavier than carbon dioxide. It's stronger. It's an accelerator for the climate, although it's considered a short climate pollutant. It's not always active, but it is, because it's always producing, right? So there's all these misconceptions of what really is the accelerator for climate change when you consider all these other short-lived pollutants like methane and black carbon, and you have to take that into account as well. So these are just some of the stories of how our work prompted. You see one of the images here, somebody monitoring, and then it prompted the EPA study. Some of the work also includes in these communities is a legacy contamination. So what legacy contamination means is that there are environmental indicators in these communities that are persistent, even though there's facilities that are no longer existent. They're no longer producing this chemical, but that pollution is persistent. It's always going to be there, no matter what you try to do. Even if you try to remediate it, which they usually don't, these turn into Superfund sites, hazardous waste sites. So there's a lot of these sites also in these particular communities, right? So that's some of the work that we also make sure that we are having this conversations where people that are making decisions on climate action plans in Kansas City are including these voices of the people that are most impacted by the climate change crisis, right? I might skip around a little bit, but I try to put my slides together, you know, because I wanted to make sure you guys kind of got a grasp of all the stuff that we do as an organization, because an environmental justice organization is not just, you know, one specific issue. It's all of the issues and how we can bring community members to be part of the decision-making process, but also making sure that our projects are community-led, that they guide the projects, right? Since the inception of our organization, they have guided what it needs to look like. So that's something that we make sure where it's equitable across the board. So here, these are some of the air monitors that we placed, and I'll get more into that, how this happened in a bit. But these are some of the air monitors that we have located in these fence line communities. So as you can see here, this is all heavy industry. There's rail, there's chemical facilities, there's a ethylene oxide facility, which is a chemical producer for sterilization equipment. That's in this area as well. And as you can see, there's a lot of more work to be done here in this part of Kansas City, which we'll get there soon. But we really wanted to take a focus in this community where our work started. So let me go to my next slide. So based on the monitors based on this data and the monitors that you saw there, this didn't just happen based on an organization saying, hey, I think we need to put monitors here. This really happened through a community engaged project working with community health workers, promotoras de salud, who are a bridge between government and the community. They are trusted, I think a word they heard them use, like ambassadors of the community, which really are very culturally sensitive to community needs and are able to communicate in an effective way. And based on that project, they guided a lot of the processes of where these monitors should be located. So first we had to do environmental health presentations. Environmental Health 101, Environmental Justice 101. And based on that knowledge and that guidance, it was COVID. So, we had plans to do a hazard mapping activity. And what that means is that we would go out and monitor specific areas, do an activity. That didn't happen because of COVID. However, based on their guidance, we still said, they still said, well, we should place some monitors in sensitive receptors, schools, communities, community centers, or residents' homes. And so we came up with a plan. Okay, now it's the recruitment process, right? So we went out in the community to direct events where they were doing voting registration and census counts, and we did direct outreach, and we got air monitor hosts. So these are some of the monitors that have been placed, like I showed you in the map, but this is just some data for 2 weeks, 2 weeks worth of data. However, you can tell that air pollution changes a lot, right? Within a block, within a mile. And these are some of these are relatively within a mile distance from each other. So you can tell here that air pollution changes a lot. And what does that mean to the community? I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so as I'm talking about the air monitors, just for some more background, if some of you might not know this or might know this, the EPA has air monitors across the country, air pollution monitors that measure ambient air pollution. So these monitors weren't really designed to protect public health. They were designed really just to say there's an average of air pollution and how do we kind of keep a threshold that if we don't go above this, we'll be okay, right? Not thinking it forward, with the climate crisis, that what is that they should have done a long time ago, or thinking about public health or these environmental justice fence line communities. So this monitor here, it's for example, this one in the community that we have a lot of work going on right now. This is on Nebraska and 10th Avenue in KCK. This is the only monitor for an area an area over 50 miles. This is the only monitor there. So we, based on this work and the knowledge and understanding of air pollution and how it plays a role in public health, and the promotoras guiding the project, we set up the 7 monitors plus 2 ozone and NOx sensors in the community. And you might think they're low cost because they're worth around $200, right? $250. This one here is worth $5,000. But these monitors, when you have them in a space, when you have spatial coverage or more granular data, it's very useful to inform community members of what's happening on the ground, what they're breathing, how to reduce exposure. If they have a kid with asthma, what do they need to do for that day, how to prepare, etc. So this is just want to give you some background on what ambient air pollution is and what one of our monitors looks like here. So these are some other sites where we set up monitors. This monitor here is on top of El Centro, the Centro organization. This here is at the community center, which we're now helping to inform a general plan. And the general plan is a set of policies that tell a city, a local government, what they should be doing to prepare for climate disasters in the future, to prepare a resiliency plan, infrastructure, roadways, bridges, etc. So our work right now that we're doing is already informing these processes of government because of the effectiveness that we're having in the local community, because we are a social justice, environmental justice organization, and we want to make sure that when people are speaking equity and equitable distribution of wealth and equitable distribution of pollution, that these same communities that we're working with that are guiding our projects are at the decision-making table. So this is huge that they're inviting us to inform just having granular data from the community level. So I'm going to talk a little bit why we monitor air pollution. So one, like I mentioned earlier, is to identify pollutants of interest. So everyone in the community might have a different purpose or reason why, but we do it to estimate pollution over time, trends over time, and community exposure. But it also assists us with developing policies to improve air quality regulations or monitor compliance, even enforcement at the EPA when they're not doing their job. When we have data, we can call them out. Hey, you know what? You're not doing your job. Your facility pollutes this much, and you self-regulate, but this community right here is being impacted. That's when we try to bring in the academics and the health and the doctors to kind of like sit with us and be able to be part of the conversations, right? So this here, just a background, what happened during COVID, the EPA gave the communities, polluting industries an enforcement discretion, right? Told them, you know what, you can pollute as much as you want right now because we know it's a critical trend. That's because the chemical, the chemical lobbyists, the chemical manufacturers lobbied the president and when COVID started. So this is another way how we hold them accountable. We do their work for them sometimes as a community-based organization. The EPA didn't want to have a science rule. So guess what? We did it for them. We got together, a lot of us nationwide, and put this hearing together and submitted it to them as something that they needed to have on record, right? This is another coverage of our work in the media around Wyandotte being ground zero for COVID. As many of you know, that was one of the communities that was hit hardest with COVID. This here in the bottom, this picture is one of the community members stepping up for energy insecurity, right? People being disconnected because during COVID, people were already suffering before COVID, but now they have this added layer of not being able to pay their electricity or losing their job because of COVID. So this is how our work intersects with energy, environmental justice, and people are just really wanting to have, with this data, you can see that they are more likely to advocate because they don't only have their stories, but they also have data to speak to decision makers. Another benefit of low-cost sensors is that it's accessible to the community. It's an educational tool, and you have real-time data, and you can measure exposure. So here there's some mapping activities, some images of mapping activities. This is some of the equipment that we have as well to look at pollution sources if we had the community engage with us and do a mapping activity. And then, as you know, or you might all know, these are the health effects of air pollution, right? Heart disease, asthma, kids are kids are born prematurely, and then other stuff, right? So, and this is just an image of particulate matter and why it has an impact on health, because PM 2.5, it's like smaller than a strand of hair, which you can't see, but it's very dangerous to the bloodstream, your lungs, and can pose a threat to health. Like that's the slide I showed previously. This is another way to get engaged, community engagement, like I mentioned. Here you see the promotoras doing voting and registration. Here are some community meetings happening around the issues of air pollution. But like I said, it's not just limited to air pollution. It's the broader thing of how is it that we get people involved in the decision-making process. These are some other examples of using this kind of data in health studies. There's currently some work that we're doing around transportation and trucks because of the impacts from the ultrafine pollution, the PM 2.5 and the black carbon, the soot that people breathe. And kind of this is kind of an example of a slide. That's an example of what these mothers were doing here. They were so concerned about their kids' health that they were out there counting trucks and monitoring and working with an academic researcher, someone like Elizabeth Friedman here in Kansas City, right? Trying to identify, okay, how do we utilize this data, and how is it that we can prioritize an intervention or a health impact assessment in their community, guided by them as well. These are some other opportunities of fellowship. This was a recognition from the state senate from this project, right? This was last year as well. Well, we were under COVID, the NEPA, which is the National Environmental Protection Act, was being gutted as well. And these policies have a huge impact on communities of color because they are left out of the decision-making process or public participation. So just a coverage of some of the media that we've been involved in as well in the recent months. This is another one just recently in the Inside Climate News. Biden just talks about his stimulus package. And so our organization in Kansas City was asked to give a statement or a quote on the issues here in Kansas City. So here you can see looking at air quality through a different lens, right? And then this is the other one supporting the new Council on Environmental Quality. So the work that we're doing is actually having a lot of attention, not here just locally, but nationally, right? So that's important to see how a small organization that's advocating for change has the capacity to really get attention from decision makers and leaders, even at the federal level. This is another thing that we also advocate for, zero emissions in the truck sector, because of the fine particulate like I mentioned. This is just a screen saying where a lot of that those emissions from NOx come from. Fossil fuel trucks produce a lot of NOx, so I'm not just going to skip through these. And this is just a slide that I used previously to show community members how ozone forms and how it has that interaction with sunlight and how it affects public health. And this is so this image here is from EJ screen. So it's the environmental, it's the EPA's environmental justice screen, which it's good, but as an organization knowing there's more to be done, we know that EPA self-regulates, that they're not always, they don't have good enforcement. You know, we still have a lot of questions. But this is just an image here showing of the respiratory issues in Kansas City. So it has a percentile here of the National Ambient Transportation. I can't remember that word right now, but I'll leave that this image there just for like background, right? It's just like the red, you mean it's really bad, but if you go to EJ screen, you'll find some more information. And this is diesel exhaust in this particular community. So as you can tell, there's a lot of this diesel exhaust, which really over time, it can kill someone, right? This is an image of the Promotoras de Salud getting a certificate of recognition from the state Senate for their work in this community-based project, right? So the attention that it's getting, that has gotten, you know, those are some, they're not necessarily wins, but the traction that the organization is building it's telling, right, of what can happen when community members organize and they try to push local decision makers. Another report that we're currently working on is the Clean Air Act and community impacts. So looking at community, at the cumulative impacts in the community. So not just air pollution, but the water pollution, the hazardous sites, and other sources, and putting a report together, because as maybe you don't know this, but EPA always says, and the regulators and decision makers always say everything's fine, you don't need to worry about anything. But the health of our community members tells a different story. That tells a very different story, because in Wyandotte, KCK, the life expectancy is 10 to 20 years younger, or 10 to 20 years less than 2 miles to the west. So that says a lot of what is it that they're trying to hide, right? So we're working on this report at the moment. This is just another example of stuff that we've been working on. Just last year, 15 states signed on to an MOU to go to zero emissions on trucks. So when you hear zero emissions, you think about cars, you think about local Teslas, you think about buses, but something that does not get highlighted a lot is the trucks. And a lot of these trucks, they end up in these same communities are already overburdened with that pollution. So our organization, working with other national groups, are really advocating for zero emissions in the heavy duty freight sector because of their impacts in these local communities. So all our projects are tackling climate change, but from a community perspective, and really looking at it from health, because a lot of communities, they might not understand climate, but when you talk about health, they get it. And that's something that Dr. Elizabeth Friedman has been able to, as our academic EJ advisor and partner, been able to have those communications with the community members, right? So they get it. And this is just another picture of ozone. So I put this slide a little bit ago. So I heard someone say about a truck count, something like that. So today I went out there and did, me and other two partners, community members, we went out there and did like a quick run to use some of the equipment that we have. We counted, this is just for 2 hours. We counted in 2 hours, 3.5 trucks per minute in 2 hours. So 420 trucks just going back and forth, you know. So we were out there with these monitors, particle counters, P-tracks, ultrafine and personal exposure, black carbon, and NOx. So this is some of the other actions that we do also as an organization. So also working on policy, but also being out in the community and doing organizing, right? Doing direct action. So here, just a couple of weeks ago, we were at the Lawrence coal plant. We went out and did a direct action in kayaks and putting signs up to shut it down because the impacts of coal to the climate and to health, right? So I just wanted to share these as well, just to tell you that organization is not just as small as it is. I mean, there's a lot, like I think someone mentioned, yeah, there's opportunities for internships or volunteering, but as small as it is, we are trying to do a lot, right? But I just wanted to show you that. And this is just some of our partners and our organizational members on the background and behind the scenes, and board members and other partners. And so, you know, like I said, even some of these discussions, you know, we were even involved in and we partnered with Dr. Friedman as well to do an op-ed. I think she mentioned op-ed earlier around incarcerating children last year. They wanted to open up a detention center here in Kansas City, and we were very concerned for the health of those children, especially during COVID. How do you plan to incarcerate kids here, and we're in a pandemic, right? So our organization partnered with Dr. Freeman and a couple other medical doctors, and we put an op-ed and an article in the newspaper. So, okay, so I'm done. I tried to go as fast as I could because I thought I had a lot of slides. I think I did, but I'm open for questions and more clarifications. So, thank you.
I wanted to give thank you to both you and Dr. Friedman. We really appreciate all your input and showing us all these current initiatives going on. Our advisor, Dr. Erin Corvo, she works with as a chief medical officer for the health department in Wyandotte County, and she wanted to also give her thanks. She had to dip out a little early, and we look forward to working with you, her, and everyone to just try to get students involved in the best way possible. So like if you have an actionable thing that you think we can help out with, please let us know. We'd love to help.
So I'm going to unraise my hand. Can I speak? Okay. So hey Beto, will you
stop sharing my screen? Yeah. Here. Okay.
Okay. So thanks for sticking around for those of you who did. We anticipate having a bigger truck count day in the future. And the more numbers we have, the more corners we can cover. And the more data we get, the more we can, well, not only data, but that will help direct, it can help impact the requests of the community organizations if we have hard data, even if what we're saying is simply common sense. So if people are interested in that, I know that some people join specifically looking for like on the ground opportunities. And so that's one that will probably happen in the near future. So if anyone's interested, you guys can shoot Beto an email or me, or actually me. I'll organize the students. And yeah, so I wanted to put that out there. And then I did mention to Sam, I know that I provided a lot of sort of nondescript big picture information. If you have questions about details or other opportunities, please don't hesitate to reach out. Through the PACU, we do a lot of education and outreach. And it's my hope that over the next year or two that we're really able to build that out. And I feel like using medical students would be a great opportunity to serve the community in a useful way. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. I guess that was all I wanted to say.
So yeah, so I don't know if anyone has any questions for Dr. Friedman or myself, or maybe I spoke too fast. Maybe I said too much. I don't know.
I think you covered a lot of information. And that was really awesome. I just wanted to know what kind of, in communicating with, talking to community members and getting them excited about your projects, what, I assume like the hard data kind of, if you have a lot of it, it speaks for itself. But what do you think works like in communicating with the communities, and like what works, what doesn't work?
Yeah. So I think with community members, trust is very important. Trust, especially when I think Elizabeth mentioned is about academics. I'm not saying necessarily you guys, but in academics have traditionally found a way to do research in communities, but they always take a top-down approach to communities because, like you said right now, there's data that can speak volumes, but when you don't have community members part of the conversation, then really what's going to happen is somebody's going to write a paper, write their abstract, write their publication, and that's their career, right? And the community remains the same. And I think this is where, as an organization, we want to make sure it's equitable, that the trust happens not just with academics, but with people like me working directly with it. So I have to build trust with them. I have to explain them why this is important. We need to organize it. And sometimes we've had presentations, we need to come back and do it over so they can get it a few times. But that's something that some people don't do. One thing that they did tell me was, you know what I like about this project, that you explain it to us, and if we don't understand, you'll bring us back, and we're okay with that because we want to get it. But one thing is that they're seeing actions happening. So it's not like someone just coming in and showing you, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do, and this blah, blah, blah. But you know what? But they're part of it. When they're part of it, it's a lot more, it's more intentional, and it's a way for them to get engaged. But I think having the material in a language they can understand, being patient, because once you get them, once they know it's the issue, especially if it's personal, then they want to get involved. And that's, so I don't know if Elizabeth wants to add a little more, but I think that's trust, and always making sure that academics bring an expertise, but the experts in those communities are the people that live there day in, day out, that breathe that stuff, that are dealing with the issues. They are the community experts. Even if we have data, because we can collect data, even us, we can work with the community and put 100 monitors. But if we don't use that data for anything without their stories, then you know what? Then we're gonna miss a big opportunity to affect change. So I don't know if that answers some part of your question.
No, definitely. Thank you.
And I'll add to it, recognizing that it's 6 and if people gotta go, that's cool too. But I guess I want to emphasize the value of the community engagement process. Like I said before, the momentum that's been gained by the community. I mean, the initial air monitoring study started years ago, before I was here, before Beto was part of CleanAirNow. So this has been, there's a lot of history to the storyline. And the air monitoring network that's being built now that Beto is guiding, while there's great data and, of course, we'll find ways to use it, the most valuable part of this process really has been the community engagement. Educating the promotoras, sitting down and having, since we're during COVID, everything's online, but we have health education classes, so to speak, online, and we'll meet with individuals again. And the air monitoring project has been the recruiting process, and then the teaching why, and then showing them the results. That's not necessarily going to change laws. I mean, they're not regulatory monitors. It's not going to enforce much, but the people on the ground are listening and they're paying attention, so much so that local governments have reached out to CleanAirNow. So I guess this kind of goes with that framework of environmental justice. In my mind, of course I need to publish and get grants because that's, my career, but the outcome that we're aiming for is to serve the frontline community and affect change in a positive way for them. And so that, I don't remember exactly how I started my comment, but the community engagement part is just so important and really impactful, because now when we go to meetings, you know, people will come up to me, hey, Dr. Friedman, I'm wondering about this. And hey, you know, when we went to that school, what were you thinking about? And they want to do more. And before this, they weren't having conversations about air quality and health. So I can't emphasize the importance of the community engagement. So I'm glad you asked that question, Shah.
And the trust is very important. And I just wanted to add, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to add this about the publications and what we've seen, you know, in this work. I've been doing this environmental justice work for a long time. That making sure that the academics and the community that is already doing the on-the-ground work, because you can leverage a lot of this expertise from what we've already done, right? Like Dr. Friedman is trusted in our community. Groundworks she's trusted with Groundworks, and Manuel at CHC and all these, you know. So what I'm saying is, we've already delivered as much as we can as experts on the ground. When we read the academics, we want them to kind of like, okay, now just synthesize this so we can advance policy, because once we have a research paper on something, then we as an organization can utilize that and take it to decision makers like Mark, for example, or the Climate KC folks in Kansas City. Hey, you know what? You're missing out on your report. You're writing out your report. And I'm going to say this example. You put out a report with no real climate change or greenhouse gas reduction targets. You put a report that's weak, just sharing examples of what it should look like. But if you don't set targets on how are you going to reach those goals, then you know what? You already missed an opportunity. So we don't want to miss any opportunities with our community members being part of that initial draft. When somebody's writing, hey, what about that target? Why is it not there? Why are you just showing us examples, right? And that's ultimately the goal, right? Making sure that people that have not been invited, that they're invited to the discussions. So. Yeah, and if any of you want to join our organization, volunteer or intern, or have any ideas, I mean, we're okay with ideas, and ask, you know, what is it that you want to do? Because one thing that I do tell a lot of students is, you know, think about that passion project that you might have, something that you want to do in service, you know, or like Elizabeth said, I heard her say, service of the greater good, that you do something that you want to do. And maybe talking to an organization like ours, or talking to me as a director, executive director, you know, I can say, well, let me see what the community thinks about that project. And you know, there's a lot of ways to do, you know, when students want to do a project, that there's a way to do it. So the lines of communication with me are always open, you know, and you can reach out and we can figure something out, because we are literally a small organization. We are a grassroots, really small organization, and you know, this could mean that you do a project and you have the community we already have a base, a community base, right, that can get involved in something. So just something else I wanted to share. So.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm a big believer that grassroots local efforts are the best way to inspire change. And we again really appreciate both of you for coming to speak. We will for sure keep in contact, send emails, try to get, again, if you have even upcoming things on the spot, let us know. We'll try to get students to come. And thank you to everyone who came, all the students, all the board members, and we're happy to see what we can do going forward.
Thanks for having us.